Hello, and welcome to a little bit of I would say, a mini vlog. And basically, I guess I could have done this not in the vlog format, but I thought it would be funner to kind of like go through this and read this. And this is going to be a little informal investigation into Ravenloft and Curse of Strahd, which is a Dungeons and Dragons horror spin-off. And for whatever reason, I don't ask me why, because it seems weird, but the very brand new version of Curse of Strahd is coming out in June. So they've just revamped it for their kind of like, it's like a weird 5.5 D&D. But this has been something that has been with Dungeons and Dragons for ages. So I managed to track down the majority of, I'm not going to read every single like Ravenloft expansion and all of those, because that would take a very long time. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to be exploring all the core books, starting with that one that I was showing you on archive.org and going to the 2016 version and the 2021 version. And yeah, just kind of like give a kind of investigation and exploration as to like what kind of gothic horror setting was like, and how it's been treated historically in Dungeons and Dragons throughout the various editions. If you're just looking for a general idea of what Ravenloft is, it's very much essentially like there's more to it. We'll talk about it as I kind of dive through and dive into all the ins and outs of the various editions, but it is basically, in its most simplest terms, is just basically a Dracula tale. It's basically like, what if you played through an old school Dracula movie in a tabletop format where you have a bunch of people together and you have to fight Draculas and the various, very universal-esque horror elements. And yeah, so this is starting with the original advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And this is by Tracy and Laura Hickman for the very first one of the adventures. And that's notable because, they are much more well known for doing Dragonlance. Like, Dragonlance is their big claim to fame. Yes. Somebody's meowing at me. Yes, Miss Moneypenny. What's up? I'm talking about Ravenloft. You're a spy character. You're not about vampires. Anyways, this is one of my foster cats, Miss Moneypenny. But yeah, so they are much more well known for creating Dragonlance, but they also created Ravenloft. They were creating a lot of things back in the day. And yeah, let me just kind of crack into this and explore what was the original Ravenloft adventure like. Okay, about halfway through this module, I just wanted to like kind of like touch on some of the vibes in this. So first off, I'm really kind of interested in the fact that this is very much only about Strahd. Barovia, as I know it, because I played the 2016 version of Curse of Strahd with friends as a player, not as a DM. But in that, like, Barovia is a more expansive location. It's more of like a province, like where there's a lot of places you can go. Where here, it's just a town, and the mists that are very famous are basically just like poison you ingest so that you can't leave. In the version I played, it was like Ravenloft was another realm, and you could only get there from mysterious means through the mist, and anytime you tried to leave Ravenloft through the mists, it just made you go back and forth, and you're trapped in the realm of this place, and there's a lot of other things going on, where this is being mainly an adventure module, so it's very much set of, you go into a town, the town, it's funny because the town is a lot more Frankenstein and I would say like Universal Frankenstein than it is classic Dracula. And that's because like Dracula, the book, it does not really have a lot of descriptions of the villagers. The villagers are in it briefly. There's like very few scenes where the villagers interact, but it's not mainly about that. It's mainly about Dracula leaving and going to Britain. So I just thought that was kind of like a fun little thing to kind of be interested. And also, like, one thing to very much note is like early depictions of Dracula, and still sometimes it depends on who you're reading. There is some very bad choices for how the Romani people are portrayed. They're portrayed with the slur term, with the starts with the G. Anyways, I'm not gonna say it here because it's not nice. It's the Romani people. In future D&D modules, I know they're called the Vistani, but the thing is, a lot of the things from the 2016 ones that I was like, oof, that doesn't age super well, are like holdovers from even this very early edition. And a lot of the more problematic aspects of those characters are not ever really expanded upon. Apparently, in like the later editions, they do try to do some things with that, but as far as we're going from here to here to here, and also because it's more of an adventure, it seems to be a little bit more of like Strahd is the villain and he's the only villain really. Like there's other people in the town who have their own, ways of living. But his minions are not other really intelligent minions or like ghosts and gargoyles and dragons, like weird dragon statues, zombies and that type of thing. Whereas like the one I played, because it's like Barovia is like a more expansive area, there are more other players and other powers to kind of like explore and expand upon. I also like that for some reason once you get into Castle Ravenloft, it feels very Scooby Doo, like where there's uh like uh there's like paintings where the eyes follow you and it's like an illusion kind of thing. And for some reason, also Dracula, who is Strahd von Zedovich, he's like more, he has like the stage magician elements to him where like for some reason like I would have thought like there's a point where like you go into a place and it's like supposed to be like my illusions, you thought this was me playing the organ but it was not me, it was not Dracula's man friend Stroud, this is just a trick. And I was like, okay, sure, Dracula can do illusions, it's fine, he's a magical character. But no, there's like this big thing of like, it's achieved by a number of mirrors, and there is this mannequin that's kind of like strung up, and the mirrors reflect and show the image of the mannequin over here. And I was just like, why? He's Dracula. He's a Dracula. Just make him be able to do Dracula powers. Anyways, I will continue. I just thought it was funny. I wanted to note some of those interesting changes. And Claude also wants me to note them. Ow, Claude, ow, that was my stomach. This might be the most funny part of the castle. Why does he own 28 capes? 28? That's such a weirdly specific number. 25? No. 30? Too much. 28? The perfect amount of capes for a Dracula. So this was a great introduction, and I can see why this specific adventure kind of stuck with people, because it does have a very like gothic theme to it. A lot of like very Eastern European influences, like all around the board. Like there are like, weird Russian references, German references, obviously a bunch of stuff about Romania. There's a lot of, dated language when it talks about certain characters. And also, it's one of those things where they go like, here's a fantasy version of a real life thing. And, there's a healthy bit of cultural appropriation with that. But it's interesting how much stayed the same and how much of Strahd's backstory, it really is only kind of like hinted at in here. Like they only give little bits and pieces here. And there were like witches and a werewolf, but like they are all kind of working with Strahd. There's no other force other than the villagers going against Strahd, which would kind of change as they get into different iterations. Amazed at how much of the castle is the same because, I've played through the castle only once, but I was amazed by my ability to recognize elements of the castle, and so far back in this 80s version of the story, I just thought was kind of interesting. And yeah, no, this is a pretty entertaining little read. Dated in a lot of ways, kind of weirdly hokey in a lot of others. Like this wasn't especially scary. It had a fun atmosphere to it, but it definitely was like, kind of on the level of like you know a gothic horror movie from more of because so this is 1983. This is less Hammer horror. This is not Hammer horror. This is very much classic Bela Lugosi Dracula type horror. So yeah, I had a good time with this. But it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's like kind of like fun to play through an old horror movie. I can see why it stuck with people and why there would be so many of them through the ages. And yeah, now I got to start to the second edition. Now, the second edition was for Ravenloft was like a big box set, so there's like a lot more to it. And yeah, I am probably gonna like skim through some of these because yeah, these are gonna be a little bit more lengthy from here on out. That first one was pretty short, so we will see. I might only do the first few of these. Anyways, I'll talk to you later. So straight off the bat, the second edition, the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons one, is so much more what I am used to from the setting and more into. It really expands the idea of Ravenloft and adds all these different domains of dread and all this like cool backstory. It also has like a lot of love letters to gothic horror in it. There's this big, it starts out with this big exploration of like, what is gothic horror? What are the examples of gothic horror? And like, kind of like diving into, the inner workings of classic gothic horror, along with like a reading list to like, kind of like say, like, hey, here's how to like write a gothic horror story. Because a lot of like, if you're running a campaign, you need to learn how to set the setting and have a bunch of well-known authors to kind of explore and get the feeling of how to bring these domains of dread to life. I love it. I also really like the artwork as well. Look at this black cat. Look at this kitty. Look at this kitty. Just a little hanging out at the end of the page. So yeah, this is like my jam. I am loving this so far. And really, really liking it. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously, this is not gonna be, it still has the issues. This is where we finally do get the fact of them removing just calling the Romani people the slur word, but now they're calling them the Vistani, which obviously is like very much about like Romani and Vistani. It's like you're not really helping yourself. You're not really helping yourself. So it does still have those problematic aspects. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I will say that like the setting and the way that it's written, it's very much a love letter to gothic horror in this edition, and I am loving it. For an old man, you got a lot to say. Except when I got the camera on, apparently. Look at this cute man. Hey. Oh, yes, you cute old grump. You cute old grump. Yeah, this old man. Ain't you? Oh, destroy you. So what's fun about the fact that this version of Ravenloft is clearly like from that transition point of when Dungeons and Dragons stopped being like more rules heavy focused and really went full in on just lore and being able to make it a more of a narrative experience, something that you play through and that you kind of like are more focused upon the narrative aspects of the world. And there is now so much more rich detail about Barovia and all of its surrounding areas. the realms of dread and all that. I will say that it sometimes gets to be very, very funny because apparently there's a place called Arkandale, and the lord of that place is a man named Nathan Timothy, the werewolf. Nathan Timothy, the werewolf. Can you imagine, like, going to a mysterious land and it's like full of shadows and dread and monsters of all kinds, and then you go, who resides over this dreadful place? Ah, Mr. Timothy. What? Mr. Timothy? Mr. Timothy? What is Mr. Timothy? A werewolf. Yeah, Mr. Timothy, the werewolf. And I just think that's very funny. So does Widow Miss Moneypenny, don't you? Yes, Nathan Timothy, 10 out of 10. Amazing name for a werewolf. Very funny that it just is one of the domains is ruled by a Nathan Timothy. So all of these weird little domains are very fun to read about. I love that this version of Ravenloft is so devoted. What are you doing, Knobs? Is so devoted to Dracula as a concept. They have one of the domains is clearly just led by historical Dracula, which I find very funny. So, like, if you go to, like, one part of this world, it's historical Dracula is ruling. If you go to the main part, oh, that's the pop culture Dracula is ruling. And I just think that's kind of fun and silly. And one of them has, like, this cool freaking Lich Kingdom where there's, like, this dude has these, like, freaking zombie secret police, and I'm like, that sounds rad. I want to play through that. This is, like, really getting the, like, creative juices flowing, and it makes it really a more expansive thing. And, yeah, I'm digging it. Historical Dracula land, and then fictional Dracula land. Amazing. Oh, yeah, the introduction of Victor Mordenheim, which is obviously the Victor Frankenstein of the Ravenloft universe. What's fun for people who are fans of horror novels, there was a Ravenloft novel on Dr. Mordenheim written by Chet Williamson, a very famous and well-known horror author. What do you think, Knobs? Oh, you've been reading all day. Also, yeah, this is only going to go for the first 3 books. So I'm only going to go for the first 3 editions. And then if people like this, then I'll cover the rest of Ravenloft, maybe this October. But I did not realize how long these books would take to... Okay, finished the Realm of Terror Ravenloft box set for the 2nd edition. And yeah, this was really good. This is kind of what I was more expecting from... the very first version that I read. So it was interesting to see how things were progressing and changing as, the more intense narrative focus of especially a game like Ravenloft kind of comes into play. There's a lot of really good just storytelling techniques in this that I think are really interesting about, like, how to set a scene, how to properly develop horror, and developing a curse, other books to read, and it like has like a bibliography of things that are like inspiring, what things can help set the mood, what are some of the difficulties of, running a narrative experience and trying to make it something that's horrific, but you have a player characters who can just basically do whatever. And yeah, it was just really, really good in terms of like reading about, how to run one of these events. I love a lot of the ideas here. I do really like a lot of the horror elements here. That being said, the racism is bad, especially when you get to like some of the domains of dread where they get into other, cultures and their creatures. And yeah, it is not great. And the Vistani are very stereotypical in this and very poor portrayals of the Romani people. again, it's kind of what you get when you're telling a Dracula story. I see why Ravenloft had the staying power, though, after reading this, because this really sets the world and the events in a way that's really, really interesting. So before I get on to the third edition one, I will just want to point out that there was another second edition little weirdness. I'm gonna get into this sometime, but this one is basically like Mask of the Red Death and Other Tales. This is a whole different version of Ravenloft that basically creates, I think it's literally called Gothic Earth, and it's very fun. And yes, what? She says, I want to go to Gothic Earth. And there's actually a few books, novels that are actually take place in this. But this is basically like a very Edgar Allan Poe esque version of current Earth that has a Gothic horror through line to it. And I just think that this is really interesting. And I would love to, yeah, it's like a guide to Gothic Earth, is literally what it's called. And it's a more grounded, less fantasy based version of Ravenloft. Not going to get into this today. I just thought I would mention it because, yeah, it's a element of a Ravenloft that I would love to get into one day. If people are into me kind of dissecting the various Ravenloft weirdness, I would definitely love to read this and then read some of the books that were associated with it, just because I would love to know more about Gothic Earth. But not tonight. Okay, so for third edition, there was this very weird element where, see this Sword and Sorcery? That is a spin-off of White Wolf. White Wolf Publishing is the ones who do like Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse. So like it makes sense that they were given the rights to kind of expand Ravenloft. This is recently, this is when, so before the, you know, owners of Ravenloft and Dungeons of Dragons were TSR. It eventually got sold to Wizard of the Coast, and Wizards of the Coast were doing some weird things for a while. And this is kind of one of them, where they kind of gave the rights to explore Ravenloft to a company called D20 System. And yeah, it's licensed by Wizard of the Coast, but it's not in the same area as the other books that we were talking about. I'm again, all of these books that I'm going to be talking about are like just the core rule books, because these are very, very expansive. Like there are tons of small little ins and outs, guidebooks, little campaign accessories, everything like that. That if you're interested in them, hey, one of the days I can do a similar thing and explore random Ravenloft tie-in books. But these are just the core rule books that I'm going for. So these are the core rule books for the third edition. We'll see how this is and see what it's like in comparison to the others, because I expect that this one probably will be the most different of the bunch because it's kind of in a different company. The artwork is pretty interesting so far, like already looking at this very kind of unique vision of how they're portraying the Gothic horror book and the Gothic horror elements. So yeah, we will see. We will see. A little bit more stylized in its portrayal already. There was definitely style in the second edition one that I was reading, but like it wasn't this much. It wasn't on every page this level of style. So yeah, we will see. And a very different art style, especially in this era, because we are in the 2000s. I think just 2000. What does it say? Does it say exactly what it was? Like in 2000? I don't think it does say, but I believe it's like 2001. I'll put the exact year up there, but yeah, it's going to be getting into, I think third and fourth edition don't have the artwork that I like as much. I like the artwork from second edition and early things, and then I like the artwork from fifth edition onward. But I'm just not a super big fan of the 2000s artwork. But this is not bad by any means. It looks fun. But yeah, anyways, we will see and we will talk about an update when I get through these. If this one doesn't take that long, I might just do all of them here and, be good, but I'm not exactly sure. This one might take a while. The last one took ages, and not in a bad way. It was just like there was a lot of texts. But as we get to the more modern stuff, it might be a little bit more stylized and actually be less text in there. So, yeah, we will see. Okay, this one is speeding by, and like it's nowhere near as fun as the other ones. I think this is my least favorite so far, but I'll get to that later. Just because it seems like every description just seems very kind of like lifeless and just like kind of recapping things. But regardless, all that being said, they did introduce there's a realm ruled by an evil puppet. Awesome, and it's called a carionette. I didn't realize, like, it's marionette, but they're called carionettes. And I'm like, bro, that's the best pun ever. Why did I never think of a killer puppet called a carionette? Whoever thought of that deserves a raise. Whatever money, all the monies for carionette. Okay, I'm definitely like skimming because I'm like, I don't need to know how to do character voice. Just, I can do him all right. So I don't need to read that. But there's this like extensive thing about, the what music to use to like set the scene. And I just want to go over some of the recommendations because there's Blade here. And I'm like, are you raving? Whoa, it's called Ravenloft. Rave in Ravenloft. Yes, hell yeah. The craft. I don't remember the crafts theme. That's cool though. But like it's weird that like there's two Kubrick ones and it's A Space Odyssey and Eyes Wide Shut, not like the Shining theme, if you're gonna do that. Oh, okay, no, wait. Okay, so we got The Haunting from Jerry Goldsmith. Okay. Okay, this is a good one. The Christopher Young one from Hellraiser 2. That's real good. Sixth Sense, okay. 12 Monkeys, okay. 8 millimeter. A Simple Plan. I haven't even seen most of these movies, I'm not gonna lie. Devil's Advocate, Mary Riley. What the fuck is Mary Riley? All right, well, here's a cat while I look up Mary Riley. What the hell is Mary Riley? Oh, what? What is this? A housemaid falls in love with Dr. Jekyll, and the housemaid is played by Julia Roberts. What? Okay, I gotta watch this. What? Anyway, sorry, just discovered that existed. This is worth. Wait, John Malkovich. All right, Malkovich. Uh, and then we get action music. Aliens from James Horner. That's good. That's a good rec. That's a solid rec. Gladiator though, that's a weird one. I mean, Gladiator's not. That's good, but Lord of the Rings. Okay, cool. Total Recall. Damn. This is like weird music. Oh, soundtracks to computer games. Hell yeah, we've gotta figure out Diablo 1 and 2. Icewind Dale, you're just shipping your own freaking content. That's a D&D game. Myst, oh yeah. Riven, okay. Quake, okay. I don't know any of those. Although this one does say Trent Reznor, so there you go. That's a man. Oh my god, there's so many random ones. Oh, Conan the Barbarian, not good for Ravenloft, I wouldn't think, but The Crow sequel? The Crow, The City of Angels? That's the sequel to The Crow. Ravenous. Oh yeah, Silence of the Lambs is a good one. Anyway, so I just had to go over the random ass music section. Also, here's what I mean by like not liking the art in this one. Like that is not good. I'm sorry. No offense to the artist that did it, but I do not like this art. I do not care for this art. And also, I'm like skipping through this because, like, do I need to know about I know how to pace a thing. Scaling the encounter levels, you're like, ugh. In the second edition one, it was like way more interesting about like going through the fundamentals of horror. This one, it just seems to be like telling you how to do everything, which like I guess because it's supposed to be like a dungeon master guide, but still boring, boring. Do not care. Oh my lord, this one gets so in the weeds. There's a street builder. No, thank you. No, no, I'm good. I'm good. I don't need to come up with the like what's on a street. Like, yes, if you're creating an area, you need to do that. But also, like, I don't need a man to tell me how to do it. This is how you build streets. I'm like, oh my god. Oh goodness gracious. Yeah, this one I don't. Uh, I can't even. I'm real skimming through this now. Okay, I'll be honest with you. I skimmed this book. This very much feels like a Dungeons Master's guide, and the Ravenloft stuff is just kind of like secondary to explaining how to run a campaign, which is fine. Apparently, there are other books I released because, like, this is not part of the reasons why this is like a weird video is because I'm talking about things that are very different. So the first one I talked about, what was that? That was a adventure book. It was only about like 30-40 pages, and it was just about an adventure that took place in Ravenloft. The second one that I read was this thing that was like a box set that came into a big box and that everyone would pick up and buy, and it was full of flavor text and was very much flavor focused and expanded Ravenloft in some very unique, interesting ways. This is very much like it says here, a Dungeon Master's Guide. It's more Dungeon Master's Guide than it is a Ravenloft guide. It just has slight permutations to change up the Raven to like run it in Ravenloft versus a normal campaign. I feel like the art I think is probably one of the biggest things that was kind of like pushing me out of this. It does have good advice and good tips if you're looking to know how to like build an entire place and how to run a dungeon master. But for what I was looking for like the kind of the more interesting, flavorful, adventure type stuff, it's very much not in this. I mean, Strahd himself gets, I think, like only like 2-3 mentions from what I read. Of course, maybe there was more in the thing, but like Strahd, who is like the big selling point of the Dracula of the setting, is it's like very rarely in this. It also like because I think that these ones there was like a bunch of these like got released at a time because it very much goes like, oh, if you want to read about this, go to the Player's Dravenloft guide. Oh, if you want to read this, read a thing called the Gazetteer. And I was like, it was just not written in an interesting, compelling way, and I kind of got bored. So yeah, I feel bad. It is what it says on the front, but it's not anything that was that interesting. Let's go to the fourth edition one. Beepity beepity beep, which is, I believe, another adventure book. So I think that this one, yeah, so this is a campaign adventure. Again, this is fourth edition. I'll be real with you. The artwork in fourth edition I do not like. Why does Strahd look like a frog? He looks like a frog. He looks like a little froggy boy. He ain't got no wine. He ain't got no style. He's just a frog. And I like frogs, but like Froggy Boy, not a fan, not a fan. So yeah, this is going to be more like the first thing I read. So I will be interested to see, how this one goes. I'll let you know. Oh, see, I already like this better though, because this is the kind of artwork I like. I like this, like this art is good on the inside. I like the setting and the way that it's like laid out, and it's like you're reading a thing. So we'll see. So this is actually a direct remake and retelling and readaptation of the original adventure that I read. What's super interesting is like that original adventure, this is doing away with all of those like domains of dread, all of that extraneous stuff from the other things, and basically just treating it like it's a place in the world of D&D. And that's just kind of like a way throwback to that thing. And it's for then current edition, which was fourth edition, and they change a lot of things. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, it's interesting that suddenly everything you know about Barovia from reading all those other books, we're back to just being a place. And you're like, okay. And this is very much seeing to go back to the roots of just being a gothic horror tale and not having the extraneous, like, multiversal planes and all that stuff inside of it, which is, pretty good for, like, people just getting into these things. So this one is interesting in that it's one, I think by far this is probably the best laid out of anything that I've read so far. Like this is just seems to be laid out really well, and is easy to follow and would be easy to pick up and play as an adventure. Interesting the fact of that the Vistani are in here again. They're changed significantly, but they still have the name, which I don't, because like it seems like they're really trying to divulge away from the more offensive bits, by making them it's something that's different. But the fact that they still call them the Vistani is the problem. This time they are humans and halflings, which already is like a change, and they're not described like they were in the original one, which was more of this typical thing. They just seem to be like, a caravan of raiders. The problem is they still got the name Vistani, so the connection is still going to be there. And they're still, it seems like they're trying to get away from the stereotypical portrayal, but not fully committing to getting rid of the name and doing something different. So, yeah, it's interesting to just see how they've kind of changed and try to make this specific element change throughout the years. Okay, legit, this is awesome. This is probably the most readable of all of the Ravenloft adventures, where like basically if you just like give it to someone to read, they're gonna have a good time, even if they don't play through it. I would say that there are some really fun, like you can tell that this is very much from fourth edition, because fourth edition of D&D was kind of notorious for being a little bit more action oriented, which does kind of put it at odds with a system like Ravenloft. Although if you consider the time period it was made in, not especially. So this starts with like a zombie outbreak in the town. There's like you basically like fight through a zombie movie, and then which was, we were getting near the point of zombies becoming another big portions of you know area of pop culture again. It kind of waxes and wanes. This was written one of the times when it was on the rise, like Walking Dead was just about to start and all of that stuff. So that's fun that you just play through a zombie outbreak. And it's kind of like an action, like we gotta stop the zombies, barricade, blah, 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 blah. And then there's like elements of like the vampires in this seem very much like they're like daywalkers, some of them, like Blade. So there's like kind of this like action oriented, it feels like kind of like one of the action horror movies. Like I'm getting the vibes of like a Van Helsing or a Underworld, that type of things from the vampires, which is fun. And then there is this like hunter who like skins people alive, and you're like, damn, that guy is basically like a Rob Zombie horror character. Like it is very much a different vibe from the more grounded, relaxed, gothic horror elements. It seems like everything's kind of turned up to 11, which, doesn't make for a very scary game, but does sound like it would be a freaking blast to play. Like, it just sounds like a really fun experience, and it's well written and well laid out. So yeah, I'm enjoying this quite a bit. Some of the gothic horror elements, though, are missing from this iteration. Also, they do use a lot of writing that's just directly from the original adventure that I read, but they do retool things and add a little bit here and there, which I thought was very interesting. And Claude does too. That's why he's constantly meowing. What's really cool about the fourth edition one is that it provides like maps and little encounters and stuff, which I think is just really kind of cool and helpful if you're running a campaign. Where it basically says like how to run it, what kind of tactics you have, and like different creatures and stuff that are in there. I'm not going through this stuff and reading all of it because it's like summarize what happens in the story, but it's really cool to have, especially because getting maps is like, especially if you got like online games and like D20 or something, is like super handy. Yeah, so that's cool. Also, I would like to make an apology because I actually do quite like the bits of art in this. I have liked all the art that I've seen so far. So I guess maybe I should be nicer. Oh no, I talked. Now he's gonna run and meow at the door. I shouldn't have talked. This is my fault. Well, yep. Shouldn't have talked. Anyways, this is cool art. So, getting actually into the main thrust of this book, which is going through and kind of recreating the idea of Castle Ravenloft and navigating Castle Ravenloft, and they use a lot of the same ideas and setups and layouts that they had in the original adventure module. But what makes this one a billion times easier to follow and just a billion times better is that every time they have the corresponding like elements of the castle, they have a map. So you can mentally make it all make sense in your head. You can go, K10 is the dining hall. Where's K10? That's the dining hall. Okay, here's how it relates to everything else. Where like there was a really large and expansive map for that original adventure, but the problem was it was not like it wasn't split up in such a way that had it like this. Like you weren't reading this and then being able to look and have it on the map. You'd have to flip back and do the back and forth. Where here you can just read, boom, 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 and then in your head create the mental space, and you don't kind of get lost in the ephemeries of K31. What's K32? K30 what? And yeah, I just think this is a way better laid out version of the of that idea. And yeah, no, this is great so far. Okay, so I just finished this, and yeah, I will be covering the other three, which is the Curse of Strahd, Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, and then the new Ravenloft book that is coming out in literally 4 days. But if you're enjoying looking at these various vampire tales in the D&D format throughout the years, I will say this one is great. I actually think that if all of this is probably the one that I'll save, and if I ever run a campaign of Ravenloft, at least a like a minor fun Halloweeny setting, I'm gonna use the like story and the guides from this one, which I absolutely did not expect. This was really good, really well laid out, really fun, and very like upbeat. And I love the changes that they do to Strahd's castle and what they add to it and what they twist and what they do to expand. And this is very much like Ravenloft is just a place that you can put on any version of any system that you're playing, and it's not, there's no domains of dread, which I do miss because I did think that that was a really cool element, and I do like all the mists and all the weirdness that are present in that second version. I think the second version is probably the most well written of the bunch. But this is just a blast, and I would love to play this with people. And I think it has enough twists and is different enough from conventional Curse of Strahd that you would surprise people. Because there's things like zombies in here, and like werewolves and warlocks and weird monsters galore. And it has all these like little extra twists and turns, and it really makes me want to go and find other D&D adventures written in for fourth edition, because yeah, I really like this. I thought this was really good. The art was much better than I expected. This is not a great cover, but everything else in there is pretty damn good. And I'm really pleasantly surprised. I didn't think I was going to like this one as much because I've not heard great things about fourth edition. And obviously this is a very different flavor of Dracula. Like this is a more like adventure, action heavy, minor gothic elements. So this is like more of a like this would be fun to play and fun to like do with friends. Um, you know, my the second version that I read that was part of that big box set, that one I think is probably still my favorite in terms of like the world it creates. And if I was going to run a long campaign, I would do that. But if I'm just looking to have a good time, I'm using this stuff. So I thought it was really interesting, and it really kind of like leveled and took back a lot of the more out there elements of Ravenloft, which I think was one of the issues with the third edition that I read, is that it went too far into the quote unquote universe, and it went too far into the domains of dread and all the nitty gritty ins and outs, where this just went back to formula, but did a lot of new things and did it in a really fun and inventive way, and it was just really readable too. So I would definitely recommend, if you're a Ravenloft completist and you've not touched the fourth edition little reprint, I would definitely recommend it. It's probably my favorite of just the adventures that I've done. And if you've enjoyed this, thank you for joining me. I will come back with some other vampire goodness soon. So yeah, hope you guys had a good time, and I will talk to you later. If you like this, let me know, and I will do more. Goodbye.